Good morning, welcome everyone. Please grab your seats. We're about to get started. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Iman, and I am the founder of Blunt Creative Inc., a cannabis digital marketing agency based out of Toronto, Canada. I've been involved in the Canadian cannabis industry since 2018, and so much has changed since then. So it's pretty exciting to see how Atlanta's approach to legalization of cannabis in the near future is going to play out. I'm grateful to be here, and I think we're all pretty excited to be here. I feel the energy in the room. I feel like you guys are excited to be here too. So we're gonna hear so many gems today. It's gonna be great. We got top experts ready to share their knowledge about the current news and events in the cannabis industry in Atlanta, and we're all going to walk away with so much knowledge on how to get your foot in the door and the future of cannabis. This event is brought to you by Treehab Incorporated, an Atlanta-based company whose mission is to transform what healthcare solutions look like for cannabis patients and physicians. Please welcome the founder of Treehab, Mr. Brandon Terrell.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I know that's the general welcome, but I'm very appreciative for a number of reasons. Today is extremely special to myself and the organizers of this event. We've worked really hard behind the scenes to bring you this event today. And the sole purpose of this event is to get to know everyone here in this industry or people who are interested in the cannabis space and figure out what we can do to take the industry to where we would like to see it. Georgia is a special market to me. I've kind of grown up in this area and have a personal attachment to the space. And I would like to see opportunities for everyone here to capitalize on this great industry, which is a big reason why we've been able to put these events together. So I would like to welcome everybody to the 4th Georgia World Cannabis Conference. We've done this event here in Georgia for the past 4 years and are excited about the potential. Today would not be possible without our sponsors. I would first and foremost like to thank Treevana, who've graciously sponsored this event. So let's give them a round of applause. And we've got a full day of agenda items. Every hour there's something happening. We've got several sessions that touch on each aspect of the industry. So I kind of want to go through the program. I've got a lot that I want to cover, so I'm just going to take my time and make sure that we touch on everything. We've got some really great exhibitors that are here today in our exhibitor hall, so let's patronize them. Let's find out what they're doing. Let's support them. Many of them have samples and products that they'll be selling, so let's be sure to engage with our exhibitors. We're very thankful to have them here today. So we're going to open this event with the future of the Georgia cannabis market. Treevana has been gracious enough to host this opening panel where we'll look at the industry updates and also outlooks, what we can expect over the next 6 to 12 months here in this market, and how everyone in this room may be able to contribute to what's next here for cannabis. And immediately following that session here on this main stage, we've got EPAC Flexibles, which is based here, Atlanta-based packaging company. They've brought speakers from throughout the Southeast, entrepreneurs who have started cannabis or brands in general, and are going to talk about some of the challenges that they faced in building their brands. And then we've got multiple breakout sessions that'll happen in various rooms. So we've got screens, we've got volunteers, we've got a ton of information that'll let you know where these presentations will be held. We've got Patterson Fans that's sponsoring a panel at 11, as well as WebJoint, which is really cool technology. I think it'll be great for us to experience what they're contributing to this industry. So let's make sure we're in the sessions. Let's make sure that the rooms are full. I know there are going to be a ton of questions. So the biggest takeaway from today will be networking. I think that there's a wealth of knowledge in this room, and if everyone can, meet each other, I think that the potential is limitless here today. For me, I have wanted to do these events because a lot of times we, talk through email. I keep up with a lot of you via social media, and we just never get together in person. And I know that's been challenging over the past, 12 to 18 months, but I'm really excited to meet everyone here. For me, I'm happy to collaborate and support in any way possible, and I hope everyone takes that same mentality to this industry today. So again, we've got a ton of volunteers here that will be available to answer your questions. I want to thank our production team, Loudermilk Conference Center, for allowing us to host this event here 2 years in a row. I want everybody to stick around for lunch. We are doing a lunch in this room, which will be catered and presented by Treevana, which is, I won't even begin to talk about their technology and how they've innovated the social consumption space, but they're going to do a presentation about their cannabis-infused water. I know they've got samples, and they've provided us with a great lunch, so we're very thankful for our sponsors. And then the afternoon hour is jam-packed with sessions. Not to say that, any one session is better than the other, but we've purposely put some really impactful sessions towards the afternoon to really keep you guys here and keep you all engaged. And to close the event, we've got a reception that is also hosted by Treevana. They got a truckload of drinks they brought in, so it'll be a big party. We've got a DJ coming, so it'll be a good day. So whatever you guys had planned, just cancel it. Let folks know you're going to be here all day. And we're gonna party and have a really good experience. So again, thank you all for being here. None of this would be possible without you. I think that everyone in this room is sending a message to the greater community that cannabis is a big opportunity that we want to be able to benefit from. So let's have a good day. So I will bring up our moderator for our opening panel. Do you have? Okay. All right, well, I'll bring Iman back, who will be emceeing for today, and she'll bring up our opening panel. So again, thank you guys.
Thank you, Brandon. This mic is too high for me. All right, so our opening panel, 2022 Industry Updates and Outlooks, presented by Treevana. It will be moderated by Keisha Lenore Fairman, and we're gonna have Senator Matt Brass, Nicholas Satmary, and Hugo D. Avlius. Please, join me on stage.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. I'm so excited to moderate this particular panel because I am a patient. I kind of call myself the Wizard of Oz. I've had heart surgery, I've had brain surgery. I found some shoes and clicked myself some courage to get up here and do this morning. So, thank you. Well, I'm really honored to be able to talk to these guys because, of course, Nicholas and Hugo I know personally, and I know that their heart is truly about patients. I've learned so much about Senator Brass just from doing my research and understanding that he is passionate about getting patients like myself the oil that we need is important. So I'll just kind of go over their bios really quickly to introduce each one of them. So Nicholas Satmary, he is the director for Sanctuary Medicinals. Nicholas holds multiple of commercial agriculture experiences and full operational oversight for Sanctuary retail and production facilities in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Florida. Over the last 10 years, Mr. Satmary has worked operations for large-scale fruit, vegetable, flower, and cannabis grow facilities. During his time, he has actively participated in various soil studies, pest and pathogen studies, breeding programs for resistance, and beneficial traits, lighting, and environmental design and testing in the Netherlands, as well as the United States. Nicholas' engagement in these agricultural studies inspired the creation of breeding and nutrition programs that are currently used throughout sanctuary's cultivation operations. Since helping to establish the sanctuary family in 2015, Nicholas has designed 3 successful state-of-the-art production facilities in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Florida, all of which include sophisticated grow environments and innovative extraction laboratories and commercially graded kitchens. So Nicholas is pretty dope. And then I'll go to Senator Braz. And again, thank you for your efforts as a patient, because I do have this really pretty card that I can't do much with. So Senator Braz is a native of Noonan, Georgia, and represents Georgia District 28. Senator Braz served as a co-chairman of low THC medical oil, which heard from doctors, patients, parents, and other stakeholders involved in the low THC oil industry in order to ensure safe, accessible medicine for patients. Matt Braz was instrumental in hurting the Georgia House Bill 324, Georgia's HOPE Act, which allows for distribution, selling of medical cannabis in Georgia, and he also carried the bill in the Senate. Until the low THC oil has been legal for certain conditions since 2015, but it was also difficult for Georgians to obtain. So thank you for your efforts. And then, of course, Hugo. Hugo serves as the Chief Strategy Officer and Managing Partner for Treevana and Treevana Remedy, a Class II vertically licensed integrated Georgia medical cannabis licensee. He is an invaluable matrix-driven strategist, and provides deep domain expertise that specializes in assembling teams and employing winning strategies in the highly complicated legal cannabis industry. There's so much more that I could say about each one of these amazing individuals. Hugo served in the Marine Corps, so thank you for your service, sir. As Air Combat Center, he was a Marine Air Ground Task Force Training Command and holds degrees in business with a minor in economics from National University of San Diego. So I'll go straight into some of our questions, guys. I'm sure a lot of the individuals here have questions for you guys as patients, but there were a few things that I just kind of wanted to go over with you guys. In April 2022, the House of Representatives passed the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment Expungement, the MORE Act. The legislation, if passed by the U.S. Senate and signed by President Biden, will remove marijuana from the list of Schedule I drugs, as well as eliminate criminal penalties for growers, distributors, and individuals who possess cannabis or cannabis-related products. Can each of you comment on how this would be impactful to the industry now?
Well, first of all, thank you, Keisha, for being a moderator at this particular event. And also, we appreciate all of you for coming, and thanks to Brandon and the Treehab team for putting together a great seminar here in Georgia, which is an amazing market for patients and also an amazing market for the people in itself. But with that being said, Keisha, can you repeat that question again? No, that was a joke.
Oh, I was like, really?
But that's a very long-tailed question. So I guess since I've already kind of started the conversation, I can transition. But the space is a very dynamic and volatile space, as there are several different types of methodologies and modeling and also sentiment that needs to get across before introducing this plant, which happens to be medicine, right? So each market and each state has their own independent ideologies and philosophies of what this plant is. And it would be amazing to see an aggregate approach from a national and federal legalized environment for this medicine. What would be amazing is to see that approval So then it can open up this medicine to several different types of opportunities, not only for patients, but for those that are looking to get into the industry. The main challenge is that it's currently still very bureaucratic. And because of that bureaucratic component, I probably see that maybe 5 or 10 years away from a national scalability of that type of approval. But in the meantime, it takes a lot of, and pardon my language, but balls to be able to step into and create this legislation in any state. It's amazing to see like-minded individuals that believe in what this medicine does. Senator Matt Bass being one of them, in which Georgia in itself, you have a macro conversation and you have a micro conversation. The macro conversation is that from a national level, everyone collectively wants to approve this medicine. But from a micro level and from a state level, which is the state of Georgia, it's going through I call it the cannabis life cycle, which is just like a business life cycle, and you have cycles in love, business, and in the cannabis space. And they all go through, it's a bell curve, if everybody remembers Economics 101. So you have an introductory, growth, maturity, and decline model, and each one is about 2 to 5 years. You have, I don't want to say evolved and saturated markets like California that are completely at their maturity level of their cycle and are constantly evolving. But you have states like Georgia that are still at its infancy introductory stages, right? So right now, from a media and from a sentiment perspective, the media always likes to portray negative news. And that's just an environment that we live in, especially in today's society with social media. But with that being said, Georgia is, believe it or not, actually fast-tracking compared to other states. Personally, I probably see medicine being put out to patients for them to finally use their cards probably within the next year. Because a lot of the operators that have received licenses have already developed the systems, the protocols, and the modeling to get up and running within 90 to 120 days, which is great to produce medicine for patients. But now, what's the epidemic? The epidemic is actually miseducation, because patients now need to know where to get medicine, right? And then on the other part, patients also need to know how to even get a medical cannabis card. So there's a process right now that follows those particular protocols. Brandon, the founder of Treehab, which is one of the platforms which is looking to help that fast track of getting patients to get medical cannabis cards by launching medical marijuana referral networks. It's an amazing platform that will do very, very well in Georgia to help kind of fast track where patients need to be. But with that being said, kind of circling back on the entire conversation, it would be amazing, and I pray for it every day to get that scheduling. But the bureaucratic powers that be will probably delay that from a legislation perspective, just because there's still an understanding of how this medicine is actually a true medicine. I believe that about probably 100% of the people in this particular room have that understanding that this is a true medicine. But now it's up to all of us to advocate and kind of be those thought leaders to be able to introduce this plant as a medicine, but in also an ecosystem that can do many great things for this particular space. Thank you.
So, Keisha, great question, and it's kind of there's two parts of that legislation to really understand and understand the importance of it. And so, number one is taking THC off the schedule, and then number two is the decriminalization piece. So, from a big picture, looking at the legislation, the important part for me is the federal government does need to take the lead on this. We've got states, obviously we have 50 different states. We got different districts within our country with the District of Columbia and various other territories. So we've got various laws all over the board. I mean, you've got recreational states, you've got medical states, and then you've got none of the above. And then within each one of those spaces, you've got laws everybody just kind of does their own thing. And so I think from a big picture, I think it is important that the federal government kind of take the lead on this and give us a little bit more guidance on what we can and cannot do. Now, getting into the actual legislation, I'll touch first on the decriminalization piece. So about 4 years ago, and I'm in my 6th year in the Georgia State Senate, and about 4 years ago, I did a ride-along with our Department of Community Service, and what they do is they ride around and check on folks on probation. And so on this particular ride-along, we were going around and we were checking on basically pedophiles and child molesters. And these people are living in their homes. They're out on the streets, and some of them did not belong there. And I look at, what is a bigger threat to society? Someone that got caught with an ounce of weed in their car, or someone that's coming after my child? Yeah. And for me, I would much rather see the person that is a threat to my child be in jail than a person carrying an ounce of weed in their car. And we hear about overcrowded jails and understaffed jails, and so to me that piece, I don't have a problem with it, and it just makes sense. Now, going back to the scheduling piece of that legislation and removing THC out of Schedule 1, and it's important for the audience here to understand what that means. When it's in Schedule 1, you cannot even research what it does. And so for me, my passion lies in the medical space for this medicine. That's where my passion is. I have a mother with MS, and when we did the study committee back in 2018, got a letter from her doctor saying that he wanted to be able to use medical marijuana to treat his patients. Well, for me, one of his patients is my mother. And I want my mother's doctor to have every tool in the tool chest to make her better. And so that's where my passion is. So the important part of getting THC out of Schedule 1, for me, the most important part is now that we can get the research we need in this country. We have research from Israel and various other countries all over the world, but we're never truly going to get the buy-in from American doctors until those papers are published in American journals. So for me, that piece and getting it, whether it goes to Schedule 2, 3, 4, 5, or off the schedule altogether, that is the most important part and the reason why we need to get that done.
Great.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah,
thank you. Adding to that point, like the senator said there, it's very unwise for us to continue prosecuting on a federal level and focusing that on cannabis. So hopefully, we're getting there on a federal level with, I think, 80% of Americans now recognizing the benefits of medicinal cannabis. They can't really keep this going for much longer. So that's huge. I think there's 37 states or jurisdictions now that recognize medicinal or adult use recreational cannabis. So again, that's also massive on that federal level. I know something in, I believe it was 2020, similar bill went through, didn't pass the Senate. So hopefully, we continue this trend, and as Hugo said before, it's making its way. Hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years, federal prohibition will end, and really we'll be able to do that. I know the board's speaking with Dr. Greg Smith, Dr. Anthony, and Cassandra a little bit later on, or this morning. I'm not sure when it is. This morning?
Is that 1?
1 o'clock? Perfect. That's going to be a very good one on the research for medical cannabis. As the senator was just saying there, that the challenges are basically we're limited now. And operating in the states that I'm operating in now, we're under the guidelines of each state. There's a lot of similarities within each state, but there are a lot of differences. And it really falls onto the operators to do a lot of R&D testing, listen to the patients, bring feedback in, and develop medicine for them. And we've done a lot of that. But on the federal level, it's difficult to really research this drug. So hopefully we'll see this. Everything's pointing that direction. Every state that I've worked in, I've never seen a state go backwards, right? Never. So just like America, we're going to just keep going up and keep moving in the right direction.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well said. Before I move on to the second question, I have a question for you, Senator Brass. I know you said that your mom's doctor was a part of that. Do you think that would be something that could help move things along if we had more doctors that were willing to speak up? Because as a patient, I've asked several of my doctors, and although they want to help me, they don't have the research to make that happen. So how do we support the doctors in working with companies like Treevana and Sanctuary to ensure that the physicians or the healthcare providers are getting the knowledge that they need to feel comfortable?
Well, absolutely. To answer your first question, absolutely, I think it'll help. Getting doctors buy-in around this state. I mean, this is still a relatively new medicine for Georgia and really for the country, and so I think getting that buy-in, and we saw it from when we passed HB 324 in 2019. We did not have the doctor support in the Senate. And the Senate had, from 2015 really to today, any kind of medical marijuana law in the state of Georgia, it really never had much issues in the House. It was always in the Senate. Well, when I got there in 2017, I kind of picked the mantle up, and it became a little bit of a passion for me. And we were able to get that HB 324 that set up the industry. We were able to get that, but we really did it without the doctors' buy-in. Well, if you fast forward to last year, when we came back with the dispensaries piece of the legislation that we weren't able to do in 2019, when we came back with that piece, we did have the doctor support, the elected officials' doctor support, and then the Medical Association of Georgia had come around on the issue. Because there's more information out there than there was 5-10 years ago. Yeah. And so now people are starting to learn. You know, I always tell the story during the study committee, when you hear a mother testifying and her child was having hundreds of seizures per day, and they had tried every drug under the sun to subdue that, and nothing was working. And then when they tried the medical marijuana oil, and they went down to 1 seizure a week, you're not going to tell me that's not a medicine. Yeah. You can't sit here and tell me that is bad for that child. And I even had, during the study committee, I had someone from law enforcement came up to me and said, you know, if that was your child and you thought cocaine would help it, would you give it cocaine? I said, absolutely. If I thought it was going to save my child's life, I'm going to do whatever I can to help my child. So yes, going back to your question, yes, getting the doctor's buy-in is huge, because it's if you're going to talk about this being a piece of health care without having the healthcare providers and the doctors supporting that, it makes it tough politically. And you know, there's realities, but then there's political realities, and there's what you want, and then there's what you can get, and that's the frustrating part of politics, and the part that I don't necessarily like. Actually, I don't like any of politics, but I just kind of do it. But anyway, so I guess the second part of your question is how do we get more buy-in? So number one, I go back to what my earlier statement on getting the THC out of Schedule 1, yes, so that there can be more research in this country. That is, to me, crucial. Number two is telling your story. Every patient has a story on how this medicine has helped them. Yeah. And so tell that story, tell it to every doctor you know, and tell them how it's helped you, how it's improved your quality of life, And I think that to me is, there's nothing more powerful than your story and how something has helped you.
And kind of to support both Nick's and Senator Matt Brass's statements, there's a great quote, which is, "The 1,000-mile journey begins with one single step." And the great news is a lot of these steps have been taken to be able to promote the advocacy of these plants, of this medicine. Now, some of the challenges that kind of convey in that modeling, you have a lot of authorities that are very disciplinary, such as medical doctors, physicians, and nurses, that are very evidence-based. It's very objective, and from a physics perspective, and you go to the root cause, which is the basics, is in understanding why. And the why behind a lot of their negative connotation and bias towards this medicine is miseducation. Because it wasn't until the early 90s that, and you might have to fact check me on this, but I could have sworn it was the early 90s, that the endocannabinoid system was a system that was finally harnessed and introduced to the world. Now, this system is a system that heals itself, and we all carry it and have it inside of us. And this system can only be triggered through cannabinoids, whether phyto, synthetic, or endo, from plants, and so on. So, and the system heals itself. So imagine that we have a system that can heal itself. Who do you think does not want you to know about that system? The big pharma industry, right? Because if we can heal ourselves eternally by ingesting a plant, and I'm a God-fearing man, and it's even in the Bible, it's known as cannabis. I can't pronounce it, I don't speak Hebrew, but it's even in Scripture. So this plant in itself heals itself. I mean, by us ingesting it or smoking it, can help ignite this system. So now, imagine if you're a medical doctor and you spent 20, 30 years of your life understanding all of the systems in the body, and then now you have patients coming to you because we have, I call it the great equalizer, which is the internet. So the power of the people and the internet now are all, they're all going through their understanding of this evidence-based science by understanding and reading a lot of the scientific and international evidence-based reporting. Jerusalem is a very predominant country that's leading the way in research and development. And a lot of that research now is coming to light here. One of the speakers who also sits on our medical advisory board, Dr. Gregory L. Smith, he's a Harvard MD, MPH. He's also a retired Army Ranger Major. So him and I are very, very close. And he's written several textbooks in academia to be able to introduce this to collegiate institutes, where now universities are using his books and studies to help introduce this to new medical environments. Now, the intriguing part about this is going back to a doctor. So if I'm a doctor, and I don't play one on TV nor the internet, so, but if I'm a doctor, and doctors are have big egos, so when you tell them that there's a new system that they're unaware and that they have to relearn, it kind of makes them really mad. But now what's happening is when about 80% of your patients that are either going through several different modalities, such as cancer, PTSD, and so on, are now stepping up to these initial medical institutions, and while they're getting their particular test or panels or blood work, they're asking the question, hey, I'm hearing this and I'm learning this, what do you think about this? And they all can't say anything for a couple of reasons. One, as Senator Matt Brass stated, it's still a Schedule I drug, and because it's a Schedule I drug, there can't be any research. And also these providers and medical physicians, by them even telling you to even go the route of medical cannabis or cannabis, they can lose their license. Now, do you think somebody wants to lose their practice? No, right? So then, therefore, they're always going to steer you in the direction that is going to be objective to their understanding of what they have to do, right? Objectivity is black and white, and there's a lot of gray in the middle. But in several disciplines, they have to go whichever route that they think is objective. So one of the things that we've it's funny because I turned 40 this year and I've been in the space for almost 10 years now. So you've seen a lot of volatility and dynamic modeling of how to introduce this to those authorities. The great challenge, and I call it the epidemic, is miseducation. So there are a lot of great platforms in the last 5 years that have launched CMEs, continuing medical education courses that are NCE, continuing education courses that are now online because of Corona, so you can take advantage of that. And these courses are anywhere between $50 to $100 to, let's say, $300 a course, and you can get a certification in several of these disciplines that surround the vertical integrated industry. Because it isn't just about producing medicine, it's also creating the education to introduce this to those that can even introduce this medicine. So some of those platforms just coming to light is Oaksterdam. Oaksterdam is, one of the first platforms. It's, time flies. I think it's almost 20 years old now. If Cassandra is here, Cassandra was one of their first, I would say, students in one of their first classes. But it's a great platform, and it teaches several different types of continuing education modeling. Then there are those at the micro level, at the state level, that are now coming in and are launching different types of continuing education and CMEs, and they're having small seminars. I know Keisha is launching a platform to be able to help introduce this to not only patient advocates, but also medical providers and so on. So now put yourself in let's use common sense. So if I'm a doctor and I take let's say a seminar, it's a 3-hour seminar on the medical cannabis, and you expect me to learn everything about a system in 3 hours, right? I come out with a certificate, I can put it on my wall and say, hey, I have a medical cannabis certification. Now, they spent 20 or 30 years understanding the disciplines of the human body, and now this system, which takes 20 years to understand, you now expect them to learn everything in 2 to 3 hours, right? It isn't going to happen. So it's a continuing model that has to be advocated towards educating medical providers. There are several educational platforms, both online and offline, that have these type of frictionless educational sources. And the power lies in these type of seminars. We're a big believer in advocating and supporting movements such as this one, the Georgia World Cannabis Conference, to be able to help educate the authorities which are in this room. So think about it. So in this state, which is, Senator Matt Brass was just talking about this right before we stepped up, by you coming to this conference, you've now become authorities because you know more than the average person, right? So now, by you just reading there's several books. I'm not trying to promote Dr. Greg, but Dr. Greg has several books that are great to kind of introduce you to the basics. And by you reading 1 or 2 of them, you will know more than most medical providers, right? This is an amazing medicine. It's continuously evolving. And there's a lot of opportunity that's going to open up in this industry in several different of the disciplines that this enables. So with that being said, we're big believers on education because it's a better power and better intuitiveness through education. So with that being said, thank you.
Well, just to speak, being that you did speak about Dr. Greg and you kind of mentioned the platform, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is making sure that our doctors know what's happening. Not just doctors, healthcare providers across the board, nurses, chiropractors, And education truly is the key to that. So I've created Healing the Healers, which Hugo kind of mentioned. It's a nonprofit where we bring in doctors for 4 days, and we kind of make sure they're okay, because in the process of learning this new education, they still have their lives as well. So we want to make sure that there's a balance, and I need them to be clear-headed when they're learning about this plant that could heal me. So we want to make sure that they're comfortable, and education definitely is the key. I'll go to the next question because I think this one is pretty important. In just a few short years since legalization, there was a momentum on legalization. There are several views on cannabis have changed tremendously. Can anyone give us insight and examples on how shifting the dynamic is part of why the global cannabis industry now generates over $20 billion in legal recreational sales on an annual basis?
That's a good question. Yeah, I could start that one off. So I do operate in one recreational cannabis state, Massachusetts, right now. And since the beginning of that, I believe that was 3 years ago now. Could be wrong. 2 or 3 years. Time flies. I'm in a time machine in this industry right now. We have seen, we see about 700 customers a day in 5 stores, each store. And, that has shifted the view in the state, that shifted the education in the state, that's opened a lot of people's eyes up. It was just a medicinal program to start with, and like I said before, always moving forward, never backwards. Then went to recreational, and now, that has enabled the state alone, the tax revenue from legalization, the ability to do so much more. The Cannabis Control Commission has done a great job in Massachusetts regulating the industry. And again, that has come with a lot of help from the operators themselves, which I do find very important in each state, is to have the operators work with the regulatory body of the state to build that program and continue to build the program. So it had its challenges to start, but has since, leveled out, has changed the views on everybody. The more education, the more they see on it. I was just actually sitting down with the chief of police in one of the municipalities that we operate medicinally in, and he was very skeptical to start off, just medicinal, right? Very skeptical on the whole program, everything, and this was 4 years ago. And I sat down with him on Tuesday, and he, big smile on his face, came into the office. First time he wanted to even come into a cannabis operation before, and told me right off the bat, my eyes have opened up. This is completely different than what I thought. The municipality has, it opted out of recreational sales to begin with, but now they're starting to think about it. And he goes, you have my fullest support on opening adult use sales here. It's really going to do nothing. It's only actually going to allow the people who need it, are unsure of it, to really test the waters. So patients that aren't really sure to test the waters, easy access to the product, and that's something he even said. So I think it's opening the eyes of everybody now. Again, like I said, it needs to be regulated, but with experienced operators, it's done. It's done very easily at the end of the day, and then that's opened up a lot of tax revenue for the states to be able to do so much more. So, yeah, that's what I have to say on that.
Well, I'll just add, I think in the old days there were a lot of stigmas that came along with it, and through time we've seen a lot of those stigmas go away. And I think too is we as a nation and really as a world have seen the harms of opioids and alcohol, and you start to analyze that and then compare it to marijuana, and it's really, to me, I just don't see the same yes, there could be some negative effects. Again, there's a lot we don't know because we have not researched it, have not been able to research it. So there's still a lot to know, and I think we do have to be cautious. You know, we don't want the industry outpacing the research.
Right.
And that's one thing we do need to be very careful about. Because we don't want to end up in another crisis like we did with opioids and all that. So, but the main thing is I go back to just a lot of the stigmas that came along with the industry. I just don't see them. They're not there anymore.
Yeah.
And sorry, to kind of support both statements. So what's very intriguing is once again, kind of circling back to the life cycle, everyone has their own understanding and subjectivity on understanding this medicine. What's very intriguing, just to give you guys an example, is I basically get several different types of texts. Remember, we've been in the cannabis industry for almost 10 plus years now, and it wasn't until the last 6 months that my own family now has an idea of what this medicine is, right? I was always known as the rogue in the family, and everyone thought I was just a mad, scientist, but
Kind of are.
So it wasn't up until this particular point that I get texts like this. My own aunt just sent me a text. She's probably going to get mad, but this was yesterday. She said, "Hola, mi amor," because I'm Spanish. "I'm having an anxiety and acid reflux problems, and I don't want to take medicine because it hurts me. Oh. I'm told that cannabis," and she spelled it Canavis, which is funny.
Close enough.
"Cannabis helps. Could you recommend something or maybe send me and I'll pay you? I don't want anything to take away my hunger. Love you." So these are the type of texts that I get daily from not only just friends and colleagues, but my own family members. And my goal was always to convert my mother. And I knew that the one day that if I can convert my mother into understanding what this plant actually is, I knew that it's going to be a lot easier to help introduce this to other like-minded individuals.
Right.
So now my mother suffers from, she's probably going to hate that I'm telling you all this, but my mother suffers from RSD, which is reflex sympathetic dystrophy. She has severe, and I can never say it, but it's fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia. I can't ever say that word. And I always blame it that English is my second language, so I still roll my tongues, but I can't say fibromyalgia. And she also suffers from many other things, but she's anti-medicine. And whenever she sees her doctor, within the last year, the doctors were like, "Listen, you need to take these pills." And honestly, if my mom was a drug dealer, she could probably make millions of dollars, because she literally has a closet of just all of the medicine that has been given to her the last 5 years, and she doesn't take any of it.
Yeah.
Right? So if anybody knows how I could get rid of that, give me a call. No, just kidding. But my mother, it wasn't until one day when she finally, she was at the office and she just started. I gave her Dr. Greg's book. Yeah. I used that as a bridge. I'm like, "Listen, read this." My mother has had it in her coffee table for 4 years. Finally reads it, right? Then I get a call that says, "I'm coming over." She comes to the office, and she's like, "Hugo, she's like, I can't sleep. It's affecting her life, right? Because my mother is the most amazing woman. She'll be perfect for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then there's 1 week of the month where she just can't move from bed."
Yeah.
Right? Because she flares up, and she just can't move from bed. And it's affected the whole entire life. And for 10 years, I've been telling her to take any medicine, and she just won't take it. And I'm talking about medical cannabis, or just medical cannabis, or cannabis in general. And finally, she came to the office. I'm like, "Mom," I looked in her eye. I'm like, "Open your effing mouth." Right? "Open your mouth, Mom." And she goes, what? And I took out just basically 1,000 milligrams of CBD, just put tincture, put it in her mouth, and I was like, close your mouth. I was like, and then she closed, and I was like, wait, I counted to 30. I'm like, are you high? Right? She goes, no, exactly. Right? Because the stigma is if you take CBD or any type of medicine that fits those particular cannabinoids, everyone thinks that the plant, you get high, right? Do I drink this CBD water? Am I going to get high? I'm high right now. Like, nobody understands that it's the components of the non-psychoactive component. But kind of circling back to that story in general, it's an introductory pattern of being able to introduce this to the space. The advocacy component, it's amazing because within the last 2 years, you have an exponential growth curve on several different types of product lines that have launched within several types of cannabinoids, right? And the way that I explain this particular medicine is when the average person goes, when Nick goes to the bar, right? Does he just go, when somebody asks me how much medicine do I take, right? Or how much cannabis or how much of this medicine do I take? And I say, okay, when you go to the liquor store or when you go to the bar, do you just take the bottle and do you drink the whole entire tequila bottle? No. You got to start figuring out your own controls of how to step into this space, right? The challenge is that a lot of the authorities aren't really authorities when you go to, let's say, a dispensary, right? When you go to the dispensary and the other person that is on the other side of the counter, they're usually 21, 22 years old, and they're the subject matter expert. So when you go there, you tell them, hey, what do I need? And they say, okay, what do you have, right? And you say, I have pain, I can't sleep, I have this, I have that. And on the other side, it's very subjective on their answering. And they usually say, oh, well, I think you need to take this. And then they'll say, okay, how much do I take? And there's a funny joke by Joe Rogan, which is basically he says, just eat just the leg, right? Just the leg. Now, just the leg is on, let's say, like a teddy bear gummy bear, right? Which now there's a lot of regulation that has removed a lot of those branding components, where now they have to be almost basic, like blocks. But let's just say if you get a teddy bear and they say just take a leg, so my mom's gonna take and be like, a leg? Now is that a scientific measurement? Take a leg or just a head? Do not eat more than a head, right? So what's happening now is we are our own scientists in creating these controls for ourselves. Now, we've spent the last 2 years creating controls to be able to not only educate medical providers and also different authorities, but we tried to eliminate the stigma and the subjectivity from this space. Right now, there is inside of us, we have a system called endocannabinoid system. Now, we all have different tastes. So for example, Nick might have a White Claw, I might like Don Julio 1942, right? So everybody has their own particular types of tests, but inside of us, we all have different type of endocannabinoid systems, right? So how do you help stabilize these type of controls, right? When you go to the doctor usually will say, hey, let's do some lab work, right? And they'll do several different types of panels to figure out exactly what's wrong with your system and figure out how to guide you on dealing with those challenges, right? That's not anything that has been introduced to the space yet. It's evolving, right? So right now, there is a test, and I recommend everybody gets one. It's called an ECS test. And the ECS test, it's E, Echo, Charlie, Sierra. So ECS. And the ECS test you can get from, there's several platforms out there. I think 21andMe has one now. And so, for example, you pay $100 and you'll get this thing sent in the mail within 24 to 48 hours. Basically, it's a little box. And what you usually do is there's two types of tests. One of them is a pricker, where you can prick your finger, put the blood, put it in, and send it back. The other is a salival test, where it's like a little strand, looks like a pool testing for chlorine. You take the strand, you put it on your mouth, you put saliva on it, you put it back, you send it back, right? Then within a week, you can log into their system, HIPAA compliant. You log into their system, and then within that, you can now have, it'll give you like 4 or 5 pages of data that will then have all the qualifying conditions like sleep apnea, pain, PTSD, and so on. And then it'll tell you the exact ratios of cannabis that you need for each one, right? So now remember, everyone has different genomics, we all have different ECS systems, and so on, right? So then therefore you can go in and now you have a objective control to then go to a dispensary, print this out, speak with a subject matter expert there and say, hey, this is what I need for sleep, this is what I need for pain, this is what I need for PTSD. Can you help us and figure out what those ratios are and ratio profiling? And then they can go out and either guide you in that direction, figure out what product lines they particularly have, or they might not even have it and might have to guide you in a different direction. But that is one way of being able to give the power back to not only the patient, but also to introduce this to academia and medical authorities, right? Because it's evidence-based science. This is one of the many different types of tests. There are several that are starting to launch, but I highly recommend everybody get their own ECS test. And I think 21andMe is one of them. And at the end of the seminar, I know that Treehab has collected several emails from everyone. So I'll get with them and I'll give them a bunch of information to send to everybody. So then that way you guys can go out and do your own anecdotal and personal research.
Yeah. Thank you, Hugo. That was amazing information, and just to kind of speak to the mom thing, when I originally got into this, my mom immediately told me that, because I'm from Louisiana, so weed was not like the cool thing, I'm going to hell at that point. However, the more I started to explain to her my relationship with Dr. Greg, and I explained to her that every month I'm prescribed Percocets, and not one time has she ever said, Keisha, don't take that. But the minute I gave her the alternate, which is a plant that God created, it was hard for her to accept until I gave her the research that had been done. So research and education is key as far as changing the stigma. I have a couple more questions. I'm just going to ask one more because I want to make sure we get questions from the audience. I think that's really important. And for this question, guys, in just a few short years, I'm sorry, let me go back. We are aware of the impact of the corona variants and how they've played in the US and in global markets. Many continue to suffer from the vitality of this pandemic. However, marijuana sales at retail level remain relatively robust as they have kind of navigated throughout this crisis. Do you feel the pandemic will further solidify the cannabis industry's reputation as recession-proof, being that we are in such a weird space right now?
I can start with that. I think we got to be careful on thinking anything is recession-proof. I think during the pandemic, there's some false indicators out there that the industry really needs to study, and there's people in this industry way smarter than me, and they know what they're doing. But if you look back at the pandemic, people were at home making money. Whether it was, unemployment and, being supplemented by the federal government, or whether it was just you're a small business owner and you got a PPP loan to keep employees employed, but you still didn't have business coming in, so you're paying people and you're staying home. What we saw was people had money and had nothing to do. And so alcohol sales actually went up as well. We saw opioid use go up as well. So None of that's sustainable. Like when you're, if businesses aren't doing business,
Right.
then they're not paying taxes. And if they're not paying taxes, eventually the government's not going to have the money to send down to help people out in a situation like this. So
Right.
I think we got to be careful just thinking of it as recession-proof.
Yeah.
But it certainly is resilient, just like alcohol is resilient. But there's always going to be a want there, and sometimes wants supersede needs. And so we just have to be careful.
Yeah.
But yes, it is very resilient. I think that is a very fair statement. But the economists in this industry, I think they probably understand too that if we had a recession like we did, or we had a pandemic every single year, eventually that goes away.
It does.
And adding to that, similar to alcohol sales, actually, cannabis sales increased also. Right. So cannabis use did, I think, having people be at home allowed them to educate themselves more online, read more up on it. I don't know what it is, right? But cannabis use did increase during the pandemic. I do know, most states had cannabis as an essential business. Definitely medicinal, I think, everywhere. It was an essential business. A couple states, Las Vegas, Massachusetts, big tourist states shut down recreational sales during the pandemic because, fear of having outside visitors come in. Being right in the middle of it, that did hit a lot of companies very hard. It took away a lot of their sales, and it's not just about making money. It really is not. It's about bettering that program, and everything costs money. Having federal funding is one thing that we can't get in the cannabis industry right now. So hopefully soon that's going to change. I just wanted to add, thinking about it, the research is a lot of companies will not work with me if they have any sort of federal funding in fear of losing that funding. So that was another thing tying all this together. But getting back to the pandemic, definitely not, like you said, nothing's recession-proof. But just another thing that, to add into that, having this shortage on basically everything has been taking a hit on the industry, so it's making it more difficult. So a little step back definitely hit us a little hard. Whereas it was for materials taking a couple weeks to get in, now it's taking 6 months to get in. So we have to. I personally had to, find storage, get large quantities, take that all in, and it was definitely a challenge getting through that. But glad to see that a lot of people, were able to use cannabis during that pandemic. So that was a good thing.
Well, guys, I want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to ask the questions that you may want to ask. So okay. I don't know, are we giving them a mic, or are we just allowing them to? Okay. Thank you so much. No, it's fine.
This is a question for the senator. Senator, first of all, thank you for your efforts in behalf of this cause. What is your suggestion for what the general public can do to get sort of the word out and more people sort of behind the medical aspects? I mean, I think about my own, golfing buddies, and none of them are for medical, So what is your suggestion for how the public can really sort of get this effort more on the front burner moving along?
Well, we kind of touched on it earlier, but a lot of it is the education piece. And then really I go back to people like Keisha or my mother or Hugo's mother, someone that has a story to tell, and tell that story. I mean, if you know someone that has had a positive effect from the medicine, you need to be telling that story for them, telling your golfing buddies, telling people at church, telling your doctor, And again, you know, I hate to keep going back to the same thing, but, you know, once we get THC off of Schedule 1 and that real research can happen in this country, I really think that's a huge roadblock for the industry and really just healthcare in general. So to me, that's going to be the number one thing we need to do as a nation. But as individual advocates, just get out and tell those stories. That's really what it's about, and that to me has the most power. You know, we hear from advocates all the time on, you know, thousands of issues a year, and I'm supposed to be an expert on every single one of them, but I'm not, and I can admit that. And I mean, chances are 90% of this room knows more about this industry than I do. So I need, you know, me as a legislator, just hearing the stories and how it's helped someone is just so important.
And to kind of support Senator Madras's statement, it's a very intriguing time that we're in right now. And as mentioned, when it comes to public policy and an introduction of how to fast track this medicine in different types of markets, Georgia is still going through its infancy stages. But the power lies in advocacy, it lies in education, and then also supporting collectives and advocacy groups. I sit on the advisory board of several different groups. One of them that comes to mind right now, especially in Georgia, is Veterans for Cannabis. There is a founder by the name of Joshua Luttrell, who was very instrumental. I was trying to get him to come here, but his wife just retired from the Air Force. So he's enjoying that because he finally gets to live that life. But so he couldn't make it. But I'm giving a lot of respect and props to Joshua Luttrell and his organization at Veterans for Cannabis, because they have spent a significant amount of time and energy in introducing this, not just to public policy, but also to veteran groups. I'm a huge advocate on anti-opiates. I'm on a board called 501c3 Holistic Hope, which is a research and evidence-based nonprofit that's focused on evidence-based sciences and research against the opiate crisis. And it happens that medical cannabis is one of those solutions. Having a lot of friends and colleagues from, I think she mentioned it, but you know, once a Marine, always a Marine, so I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. And I've seen a lot of my, sorry, it's a habit, I have to, but seeing what the opioid crisis has done to veterans in general. I've had a lot of close colleagues that have killed themselves because they couldn't handle it and opiates destroyed them. So I kind of made it a personal mission to focus on introducing this to veterans and like-minded individuals. It's a very interesting transition, and as we speak right now, the veteran community in itself, especially at the actual private and public component, are now finally allowing research-based components with veterans, right? They're finally starting to introduce that to the VAs across America, and we're lucky to be proud to kind of finally see that go into fruition. There are two sides to introducing this medicine. You have, as we all know, and I hate to say it because Senator Matt Brass is here, but public policy and bureaucracy is very stagnant, and it's very, it lags in time. And the ways of fast tracking that is through creating that sentiment and awareness and noise for those to fast track these particular types of policies and education. Georgia has done a great strategic relationships with being able to introduce this medicine. I know MAG, which is, what's MAG stand for again, sir?
Medical Association of Georgia.
The Medical Association of Georgia last year had all of their medical providers attend a closed-door seminar at here in Atlanta to concentrate and introduce them on focusing that this is one of the main talking points that they want to start introducing to all of their physicians here in Georgia. That is amazing. That is an amazing step. You know, in the last 10 years, to see a collective group as powerful as MAG here in Georgia supporting this particular movement is a huge endeavor to see. The good news is, as mentioned before, there's two sides to the spectrum. You have what the media is portraying, but then you have what's really happening behind the scenes. And behind the scenes, Georgia is going to be one of the top markets for medical cannabis and for patients. I wanted to circle back to the recession conversation because recessions are cyclical, and medical cannabis was one of the disciplines and industries that still allowed for the opening of the medium of exchange component to be able to sell during that particular recession. And it was and the other part that I kind of wanted also introduce is you have two sides, which is the medical and the recreational. You have several different operators that have licenses in both markets, and all of the recreational markets were shut down during Corona, and only medical was open, right? So then, therefore, if you're a patient and you don't have a medical card, you can't go get a medical cannabis during the recession, right? Unless you go to the black market. So therefore, it forced those to educate themselves and go through the proper process of getting a medical cannabis card to then go through the protocols of going to a medical cannabis dispensary. Yeah. Now, here are two other components that I put the power back on the user, right? If you go to a recreational dispensary and you get ready to get your, let's say, medicine, and your medicine is $300 because you have to pay the taxes that are involved in recreational, or you can go to a medical cannabis dispensary, but you have to get a medical cannabis card, and the same product, instead of costing you $300, will cost you $200. Where do you think you're going to want to go? To a medical cannabis dispensary. So it's forcing the market to create a free market for those users to get medical cannabis cards because they'd rather get cheaper product at a medical cannabis dispensary. And the reason why is because public policy promotes the medical cannabis initiative, and the recreational component promotes the tax and the economics that it provides towards the sustainability of a state. So there are a lot of transitions on how this space is continuously opening up.
Well, guys, I see there are a whole lot of questions out there. This young man here has a question. I'm so sorry, guys. We're going to have to wrap up in just a little bit, but I want to make sure we get your questions.
I don't think I need this, but I'm in the United States retired Army. I've been to Desert Storm.
Hoorah!
Hoorah. Soldier on, all that. You know, I've been back and forth. I've got one leg. I've got the Desert Storm. I'm nervous in front of people. Talk to you individual all day long.
Yeah, you're fine.
But I'm going to try and make this short, but I've been back and forth with VA about cannabis. And I'm not going to admit to him buying it, getting it, or anything else because it's illegal here. But I can tell you that they took me off my pills, and I'm not big on pills. I take so many damn pills to sleep, get rid of my PTSD, my images, all that crap. And not one of them will listen to me. I've been up there for since 2001, when I lost my, when everybody got laid off. Aviation, all that. And I am tired of listening to them telling me that I can't have my Percocet, my this, because I'm pissing you know, I got marijuana in my system. The doctors all want to give it to me, but they can't, federal. And I'm not the only one. There's so many amputees in this world that don't understand what that bone being cut off is. There is nerves. There is every damn thing else in there. I'm about to cry about it because I can't get my 100% because, number one, my cannabis. Number two, I got to write 13,000 letters to every senator in the world to get it. They got me on 70% right now, PTSD, and something else. I'm nervous right now. What is the world going to come to when you got all these people in this pain walking through? I'm a Christian, okay? He's talking about the Bible. It's used in a different way in the Bible, but what are they going to do to these doctors? Come on. I need my pain, and the marijuana is the one that does my PTSD. It calms me from sitting there punching somebody out because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. What are they going to do? They're going to have to get all us vets, 150 or 100% of all the vets walking the streets, doing all these things and have riots? Seriously, sir. I know I'm hearing a little bit about what you know and don't know about legality. Okay, there's a sad story. I'm going to shorten it. What's going to go on about that? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So can you repeat your question just one more time?
My question is, I know you touched on it a little bit about what is going to be legalized or what they're fighting for, but come on. Taking my pills because I'm high? Taking my pills because I need to get rid of this PTSD about how many thousand, how many people I might have killed or didn't kill? I don't know.
Right. So I think there's. I think I do. And number one, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So again, it all in your case, and so VA is a federal agency. It's a very broken federal agency, as you know. And I mean, I'm a veteran myself and had to deal with the VA myself, and so thank you for yours. So I know exactly what you're saying, but it is VA is federal. I'm at the state level, so I have no oversight over the VA, but. Like you said, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but those VA doctors, most of them they're either kind of voluntary type doctors that come in on the side, or they are direct federal employees. And either way, they are subject to, sir? Well, like I said, some of them are voluntary or contract type setup, but regardless, they are beholden to federal law. It doesn't matter if the state of Georgia overnight became a recreational state, those doctors at a federal agency are going to still be subject to federal law. And so until it changes at the federal level, the VA is really kind of stuck in a quagmire there. So that's really the education piece that we've all talked about on how to get rid of these stigmas is got to happen at that federal level if we want to see this type of change at the VA.
And to kind of support Senator Matt Brass and to answer your one of your questions on phantom pain, the pain that he has when let's say a limb is cut off, let's say your arm is cut off, the pain that he's having is he's still psychologically thinking that he still has an arm, right?
That goes away over time. Phantom pain that you talk about are like, I'll explain it to you. Screwdriver.
Yep.
Right up in there. Think about it. Where's your nerve? There's more than one nerve in that thing.
Yeah.
Where they go? Your heart.
And to kind of support, because I know we're running out of time,
Yeah.
it's you have the macro level, which is from a federal perspective, which is going to lag. I hate to say it, but we got to constantly keep creating promotion and advocacy towards the component. I'm big on the veteran front, and each state has their own veteran communities that are focused for cannabis, right? And I shouldn't be telling anyone this, but those groups in general, like Veterans for Cannabis and so on, have layered and created multi-channels to be able to introduce several types of medicine to patients that need it, right? Now, there are two sides. One side is this medicine is not cheap, right? Those are just the facts. The reason why is there's economies of scale of what it costs to create great medicine. A lot of these groups have compassionate care programs. And compassionate care programs subsidize or will pay for that particular medicine of what you need. What I recommend is I'll talk to you when we get done, and I'll circle back. But I highly recommend, if you're a veteran, Veterans for Cannabis, a Georgia organization, also a 501c3 nonprofit. They're one of the groups, and I could steer you in the right direction because it takes other leaders like you that have already taken the transition and know that medical cannabis works to then figure out a solution so then you could be a voice and then you could promote those solutions to other like-minded vets like yourself. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you so much for your question and your service. Unfortunately, guys, this particular panel is going to be wrapping up. We do have another one at 1 o'clock with Dr. Greg, with all of the physicians. They'll be able to give you more information. I would really suggest you guys come and be a part of that one. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the panelists. Again, thank you, Brandon, for putting this on so that we do have a platform and people can understand what's out there. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference.
Awesome. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, especially Nick and Senator Matt Brass.
Yes.
And then also to kind of promote one more thing. Sir, the one thing I wanted to say was Senator Matt Brass is actually a disabled veteran too. So just giving you guys some updates on that. But thank you very much for everything. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
God
everybody.
bless.
Thank you, Keisha.